Welcome back to Trail and Ultra Running Training. This is today I have Brian Passenti on the podcast. He and I met 6 months ago at the UESCA Ultrarunning Conference, and we've been talking about doing a podcast. And then just has taken a while for me to get my act together. So, Brian, thanks for joining. How about you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this goofy sport?
Good to see you again, Will.
Yeah, you too, man.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, we met at UESCA and then we hung out at Aravipa's Javelina 100 over
Yeah,
the weekend. We were both crewing different athletes of ours. And yeah, a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it. I am I am Brian Passeni and I live in Western Colorado. Been in Western Colorado for about 25 years or so. How I got into this goofy ultra running sport. Um, I've always been a distance runner, not ultra though. And in 2009, I did Ironman Arizona after a slew of other Ironmans, a handful of other Ironmans I had done. And a lady at the gym had given me a book. She saw I ran on the treadmill quite a bit through the winter. And she said, "Hey, I read this book and I thought it was good, but it would really resonate with you, I think." And she passed off Born to Run, late 2009. And I blasted through the book in short order. And in 2010, I mailed Ken and Marilee at the Lifetime, or not Lifetime, I'm sorry, at Leadville Trail 100. P.O. Box, I mailed them a check and was accepted into the Leadville 100 a few weeks later when they mailed me back a letter telling me I was accepted.
oh, that's awesome, man. That's I would wonder how many people have sent a letter in forever. That's fantastic, dude.
I thought it was even in that day and age, it was kind of still unique to send
Yeah.
somebody that type of thing. I was like, this is kind of strange, but what do I don't know any better. So, and I was like, I actually appreciated it because it made it feel like that small town, homegrown feel to it. Like somebody's going to the P.O. box every day and checking for mails and registrations, like we just don't live in that world anymore. It's so much less personalized now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like it's the general, we have so much more contact, it's all like depersonalized contact. So yeah, I think it's one of the reasons like Barkley, for example, like is still such a kind of phenomenon. I mean, obviously it's an insane race with insane things and insane requirements, but the fact that like you can't just apply for it and you have to figure out like Laz's secret email address is probably is also probably a big driver. Yeah, man. So like
Yeah.
how was that first Leadville forever ago?
I was obviously much younger. It was 2010. I showed up for the 50 miler. I thought it'd be a good idea to do a 50 before I did a 100. But I had raced for 12 hours at Ironman, so I mean I wasn't in the space, but I knew what long distance was or long time on the go was. Fairly familiar, but 12 hours, so potentially doubling that or greater for the 100-mile distance. So I showed up for the 50 miler and fared really well, like surprisingly well at the 50 miler that year in 2010. I was fourth overall. I want to say I ran a 7:47. Duncan Callahan, Timmy Parr, and then another gentleman was third, and then I was fourth overall. And it was funny because they did a little who's who in the 2020 edition of the Leadville 100, and I got like a possible keep an eye on this kind of guy and a group of other 20 other runners, because
Oh,
I had
nice.
fared so well at the 50. So I showed up for the 100 just completely naive to the distance. And it went well. It went exceedingly well. I was sub 24, and in my train, I didn't have children at the time. I had a decent job. I was able to a fairly flexible job. I was able to get a good training run in the morning, good training run in the evening. And that's what I did for the whole summer. I didn't know any better. Just thought, well, shoot, if I'm going to run, I should just run twice a day. And I ran 8 miles in the morning, 8 miles at night, up one in the mountains here locally. And that was basically the whole summer.
That's awesome, man. And you do
Yeah.
that like, I mean, that's a ton of volume. So like, some of that
Yeah.
speaks to your like, I mean, mean, I break up most people. So like some of that speaks to your background. Like how did you come up in running? I know you've been running for forever. We talked about it a little bit, but everybody else doesn't. So like how did you get started in running?
My father was the head of the recreation department in one of the towns in northern New Jersey, and where I grew up. And my brother, I have an older brother, and he played a lot of sports. We're a very active family. Just an older brother and myself, and my dad was the coach of every team I had until I was about in fifth grade or fourth grade or something along those lines, for all the Pee Wee teams. And um, there was a requirement in our house that that first year you're eligible. I want to say you're 8 years old, maybe. That I was expected to play every sport, or a sport every season is what I'm trying to say.
Got it.
So I had to play basketball, baseball, soccer. I did track. Uh, I think those are the basics. I can't think of another one. And I, and then after that, you can make the decision on which ones you enjoyed and which one you wanted to pursue. But you had to try them all, and
Mm.
it was pretty evident. Like I was horrible. I'm still horrible. I'm 50 years old. I'm still horrible at basketball. Like I cannot dribble. I cannot dribble and look away from the ball. Like I can dribble, but I can't. As soon as I look away, the ball's gone. Right. So I wasn't good at basketball. Baseball was too slow of a sport for me, especially at that age, because kids weren't ripping them out of the park, and it wasn't that
Yeah,
active at
I
that
get
time.
that.
So I played outfield, and I picked dandelions. Uh, you know,
Me too, man. That was like kind of my thing with baseball forever.
yeah. And so that was those were eye opening, and I was like, oh, this process isn't that bad of a process. It's pretty cool, like that I was able to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. I also wrestled, I guess. That's what I didn't mention. I enjoyed wrestling. I enjoyed soccer, which was maybe a crossover sport of some sort. Just
Sure.
lots of running around and kicking a ball
Yeah.
in a small confined space, and track. And so I ran track, and my father had asked, like, what do you want to run? And I said, I don't know. And he said, well, your brother's a fairly good sprinter. You should try sprinting. And I did for like 2 years of the first 2 years I ran track. I ran the 100, and I think at that age you have like a 60-meter one, like a shorter than 100, and then maybe the 200. I ran on some relays, but I wasn't. I was always like fourth or fifth on the relay, so it was like sometimes I was in, sometimes I was out. Like I was always on the cusp of being the third leg or the slowest
Mm.
leg of a relay, basically. And so I wasn't like a standout athlete or anything like that. But 2 years of that went by, or 2 seasons of track went by like that, and we were going the the third year, or probably my tenth birthday year, in the summer of my 10th birthday. We had another track meet added to the calendar in a different town that we hadn't been to before. And I remember Eddie Abramowitz's mom, Eddie Abramowitz being the miler for our team. His mom couldn't find the school, and it's of course 1,000 years ago, and so there
Yeah.
wasn't cell phones or any of that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
GPS trackers or anything. She's reading some piece of paper that my dad printed off and handed to every teammate, but she can't find the school. And so she's driving around, wandering around neighborhoods looking for this school. My dad's freaking out at the track, talking about it with my mom, like, who's going to run the mile? Who's going to run the mile? I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do. Maybe Eddie will show up. So, long story short, 10 minutes before the event, I'm like, hey, I'll jump in and run the mile. And they're like, ah, you're a sprinter. Like this is a mile. It's 4 laps. And I'm like, yeah, 4 laps. I got it. I understand the concept. It's a mile. Like, let's give it a try. And so eventually I persuade my dad to let me jump in, and he gives me this huge pep talk, like, hey, don't go out too fast. I want you to stay at the back of the group, and then in the last lap, if you have anything left, just go for it. And I was like, that's a fair assessment, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I just ran the 100-meter dash, an hour ago. So the gun goes off, and I just take off like a bat out of hell, and I crush the 400, and I'm ahead by, I don't know, 50 meters or something like that.
Jesus.
And and my dad's like freaking out at the finish line, at the lap mark, and he's like, you're going out way too fast, you're gonna blow up. And I'm like, three more, right? Three more, and he's like, yeah. And I do the next one, and I got like a 70-meter lead, and by the third lap, by the bell lap, he's like, just go. And I'd won outright my first mile, and pretty handily without any real structure to it. And the joke is that I never ran the 100-meter dash again. I
Yeah,
became the distance kid, and it just naturally fell into place. Yeah.
yeah, man. I mean, that makes a ton of sense. I feel like if you send it right out the gate and end up beating everybody by that much, it's you might as well lean into the talent. So like where did that go from there? I that's we were not a running family. Like I did things like football and baseball. My dad was a collegiate wrestler. It's like very athletic background, but definitely not a runner. And so like I didn't know there were track events for like 10-year-olds until much, much later in my life. And so like where do you go from there to winning a mile that that aggressively at the age of 10? Like what pushes that into like middle school and high school?
Yeah. So I ran the mile and the 2 mile and the track. Those are basically the long distance events on the quarter mile oval. And that transfers over into I guess maybe right around 10 or maybe 11 or 12. Somewhere in those younger ages though. Cross country is the other opposite season. So that's
Got
the
it.
fall season, and track is a summer season. And then when you get into school, it's more like spring for track.
Hmm.
Those are the seasons. So I crossed over to cross country running in addition to track, and I continued to wrestle actually. So I had a winter sport as well, and it was more wrestling. I wasn't great at. I actually enjoyed it. I wasn't great at it though. I wasn't even decent at it. Is what I should be honest.
It's
But
a
I
hard
enjoyed
sport,
I,
man.
I enjoyed the cross training of it. I enjoyed getting out and doing the work, and I mean I'm a skinny, wiry guy now, and you could only imagine me as a kid. I was pretty skinny and wiry, and my
Sure.
mom would freak out. I would try to cut a pound, on a Saturday morning with a trash bag on, but I loved it. It was just the drive. So I guess I had that pretty early, but I did
That's
run
fair.
through middle school, cross country and track, and I fared pretty well. I would go to regionals and state meets, or state and regional areas. So regional in my area would have been 13 states of the northeast area corner of our country. So the northern 13 states area. I would go to regionals and states. I never went to nationals. I did qualify maybe once or twice, but we weren't well enough off to drop everything and go take a vacation to Austin, Texas for
Yeah, man.
nationals.
That's fair. I get that.
Yeah.
So like I guess obviously a good amount of talent early on this. It's funny. I was laughing because I knew a bunch of wrestlers. I tried it for a little bit. It wasn't my sport, but it was a thing that um I made an effort at. I wanted to see like what it was for my dad. And almost all the wrestlers I knew did track and cross country because it helped them keep in shape for wrestling. So there was like a
Mhm.
lot of crossover there. But yeah, so like where'd you go from running distances in like middle school, high school to finding world triathlon, I guess would be next.
So as far as sport goes, through middle school, I got offered a scholarship to run for a private high school, but my outside of sport, my life kind of fell apart. Quite honestly, I had struggles with identity and addiction, and I went to a bunch of different like long term treatment facilities
Sure.
all through my high school years, and um, running was still, or as much as it could be, was still always a part of my life as much as it could be. If somebody gave me the opportunity to go for a run, I would just drop everything and go for a run in these facilities, and sometimes they would use it as a reward. I remember 2 times like feeling like I was like what's his name, Andy Dufresne from
From
Shawshank
Shawshank.
Redemption.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
where I like when he gets them the beers on the roof, where I was like, hey, like if we do this, can we go outside and can I run? And they're like, okay, if you do it, whatever it was, and in 2 different occasions it happened, and there I was like, all these kids are sitting on the curb getting fresh air, and I'm running around the parking lot in circles, like that's what I wanted to do. So I had some struggles and didn't really compete at
Yeah.
the high school level. Um, Kind of just aged out of the system of that. late 17 or almost 18 years of age, before I found just my natural freedom in adulthood. I went into the military and continued to run, and excelled there in sport. On the weekends, I would go run the 5Ks and the 10Ks, get those fake plastic checks, like that you get on the podiums. Yeah, and and so that's just what I did. I always knew it was a gift, and I didn't at those times I didn't have to work on it that hard, quite honestly.
Yeah.
The military helped. I mean, of course, they had physical fitness, but even at 10, I didn't work too hard at, at putting it together or structuring it or anything. And
Yeah,
then
man.
after the service, I decided to take a road trip from northern New Jersey to California to visit some friends that were still in the service. And I came through Colorado, and essentially I've never left. I went on to California to go visit those friends, but I stopped in Colorado, and I've never left. That was in '98, and I guess I'm on my 26th year here. And in those first few months that I showed up in Colorado, there was I don't know, I might have been looking for a job or something. For some reason, I was reading the paper. Not that it was odd to read the paper, but just
Yeah.
odd that there was an ad for volunteers to help out at a triathlon. And I thought,
Okay.
might be a way to connect with a runner or two.
Sure.
New guy in town. I was literally here about 8 weeks or 6 weeks or something. And I thought, well, it was like show up on Sunday morning with a sweatshirt and we'll put you to work. So I showed up on Sunday morning with a sweatshirt, and they put me back on the back of a motorcycle, and I had to watch bikers to make sure they were being safe, but also like some drafting legal type of thing that they gave me the rundown before I got on the motorcycle that morning.
Got it.
Crash course. They gave me a lunch ticket. They gave me a lunch ticket for their award ceremony, and I thought, well, shoot, like I did all this work for them, air quotes. I might as well go, reap the rewards and go get a free burger.
Yeah,
And so I sat through
absolutely.
their award ceremony, and I saw all these people going up and getting their awards, and I was like, huh, I could do this. Like, it's really not out of the question. I mean, I can ride a bike. I've ridden a bike like a type of kid growing up,
Yeah.
uh, and I wasn't a great swimmer at the time, but I was decent enough. I had a pool as a kid, and so I had no fear of the water, and just really comfortable in the water. I just needed probably some structure on how to actually swim, like for for fitness, I guess, or
Sure.
for competition. So um, I was smoking at the time. I should tell you, I smoked, I don't know, 3/4 of a pack of cigarettes a day.
Sure.
In the service.
Yeah,
I
man.
had I had chewed, or I had used chewing tobacco. I guess I should
Yeah.
specify what chewing means. But so
Probably good for some
I,
people. Yeah.
I did those things in the service, and upon exiting the service, I just still had those vices. So the triathlon, like within 3 days, it like completely changed my outlook. I just said, all right, I'm gonna change the things I'm doing. I quit smoking that week. I went to the bike shop and bought like the only trial bike that this small town had. Bike shop. I bought the only time trial bike in the shop, and it
That's
luckily
awesome.
fit me.
Yeah. I mean, what a coincidence that is. That's lovely.
Yeah, the guy sold me bike shoes, and I was like, you just don't wear sneakers? Like, I don't even know what bike. Like, why? Like, bikes have shoes? Like, that's ridiculous. Like, so he sold me these
Yeah.
bike shoes, and and all the hilarities came that year. The second time on the bike, I got to the stoplight, couldn't get my feet out. I got like a line of traffic behind me. I dump over, all the hilarities that you ever could imagine.
Oh yeah, man. Getting your shoes out the first time is such a pain. And like the worst is when you just like cannot get it to unclick or re-click right at a light. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had a decent, spirit about it. I remember like getting up and bowing to her, and telling her, like I put on a show for you, because the lady behind me was like chuckling behind her steering wheel. Like she wouldn't make eye contact with me, but she was like hiding behind the steering wheel laughing. You could see her chuckling, her whole body shaking behind the steering wheel.
Yeah, man. As we would.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah. And I
it's
was like, rightfully so. Like, if
yeah,
I was in the car behind me and I saw that, I would think it would be pretty hilarious too. And there was no harm done. I didn't hurt myself by any
that's
means.
good. Yeah,
Yeah. Just a little ego hurt.
indeed. Yeah, man. I've definitely like I've been there. I used to cycle a lot. It was definitely it happens. It absolutely
Yeah, totally.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So like,
Yeah,
how'd
and that
you?
was that
Yeah.
was my introduction into sport, into triathlon specific. Running came pretty naturally. Um, I was working construction at the time, or
Mm,
just before the triathlon. I was working, and I actually had to go to a chiropractor. I was a framer, and I think there's like part of me that's always trying to be efficient, right? So I was like,
mm.
if I'm a framer, I should be efficient in framing, and I should carry every tool in my tool bag, in my saddlebags. And I was getting like lower back problems from like going up and down the ladder, standing on, pitched roofs and all those things. And I thought, well, shoot, like if I'm going to really give this thing a go, I mean, which was just recreationally, um, I probably need to change some other things in my lifestyle. So the smoking went away, the chewing went away. And I thought, man, I don't see too many guys at the construction site that are going out and racing in spandex, after work. So I thought, there's probably something to this. So I needed to get a gym membership to a swimming pool to train for swimming
Sure.
in Colorado. And so I thought, I went to the hot springs and I looked at the memberships and I was like, man, I can't afford that. That's pretty pricey.
Fair.
And I thought, well, maybe I'll get a Saturday job as a part-time lifeguard and maybe they'll give me a free membership out of it. And essentially what happened is I wound up quitting construction and getting a full-time job as a lifeguard at the swimming pool so I could swim train
Smart.
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was working every angle of it. I was already manipulating and trying to work the system basically.
Love that, man. I mean, construction's harder than body. It is a brutal crossover to try to train while you're doing that work.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
I
I
don't
think
miss it at all.
I think I was like 24, 26, and I'm like, this isn't going to end well. Like if I'm already going to a chiropractor, like this is, and of course the chiropractor is trying to sell, you know, more visits or packages or whatever. He's like, oh yeah, you're gonna have to see me twice a week for the next 6 weeks, and then once a week for 10 weeks after that. And I was like,
Sure.
and I was, money obviously was an issue, and I was like, I don't know, that doesn't seem right. Like I shouldn't feel like this, so let's figure something different out. So lifeguarding was way easier on the body. I got the swimming pass for free, and I was actually pretty decent in the water. Like again, I was pretty comfortable. And the end of story to the lifeguarding game is that I became the pool manager of that facility.
Nice.
Um, I taught lifeguarding courses. I was the guy that would go to the bottom of the pool, and the new lifeguards would go save me because I could hold my breath forever, and I was super comfortable in the water. So I did learn. I did get like a master swimming course, just to kind of give me the techniques to swim for competition. But otherwise, I was really comfortable in the water already.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely don't miss construction life. I did that some like a little like stonework and concrete and stuff when I was 30 and I don't 30-ish, I don't know. And it was just it's miserable. There's no way. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
man.
cutthroat. I mean, it is cutthroat. It's tough work. It's tough on the body.
Yeah, it's
It's hard to
brutal.
it's hard to do anything after work when you slugged rock or carried mud buckets up the scaffolding all day long.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're moving thousands of pounds of something around most days, and it's just it makes it very hard to have any energy left at the end of the day.
I mean, essentially, it's your workout.
No, it is absolutely like I didn't hit that. I've lifted since I was a child. And I definitely didn't hit the gym once that summer because it was just brutal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man. So like going for tries, like how is that going? It sounds like you took to that pretty naturally as well. It sounds like you have pretty good like endurance genetics, I guess. So like how was the try life? Were you running did you immediately go into Ironmans or did you start a little smaller or like how we go there?
So that was I think 1999. I did the local triathlon. It was a sprint distance triathlon, and it was the end story to that is that I became the race director of that race for its last 3 years before highway construction inevitably got rid of our grandfather clause, and we weren't allowed to hold it on the same course that we have for the last 30 years.
Got it.
Um, and I just showed up late in the game or in the middle of the game. I think I showed up around the 15th anniversary of it or something along those lines. So that was my first event in 1999 triathlon. It was a half a mile swim, a 15-mile bike, and a 5-mile run. So not a just a little backyard one locally here that was unique to our town, but it wasn't like Olympic distance or anything really specific. It was my first taste of it. Um, that first year, I mean, I got through it. I enjoyed it. I mean, I think that was the biggest takeaways. I was maybe like third in my age group and 12th overall out of like 150 people or something like that. So nothing. I mean, a
It's
decent
not
turnout
bad. Yeah.
for a brand new triathlete, definitely.
Hmm.
But I did have like an exercise background. Like I knew I had the endurance. I just really had to learn the skills and techniques of riding a bicycle and running and swimming together.
Sure.
Um, but it just grew from there. After I finished that first one, which I thought was, in my mind, the biggest thing you could do. I mean, for me at that time,
Yeah, absolutely.
as soon as I got done with it, I was like, oh, like, I wonder if an Ironman's possible. And I actually like really thought out the process a little bit. So I took 5 years. I did Ironman Coeur d'Alene in '05.
Okay.
And so I used that time, like I used a long trajectory. I think in this day and age, we see a lot of people that want to go straight to the top. You and I
Yeah.
both see that in the spaces that we're um, in this ultra world where, people read about 100 or 200 plus miler and they want to do it next year. How do you get me there, coach? And,
Yeah.
and even back then in 2000, I was already like, let's do a 5-year plan to Ironman. And so, I did
I love that.
sprints. I did a natural progression. I mean, maybe even a pretty drawn out one, quite honestly. But I didn't
Yeah.
know any better, and I thought, I enjoyed it so much that I thought, there's no quitting this. There's not like I'm gonna do an Ironman and be done, but let's just steadily get there. So I did that in '05, Coeur d'Alene, '08 and '09. I did
Got it.
Arizona
Okay.
Ironmans as well. And at the end of '09, I was on the treadmill when the lady at the gym cast off Born to Run, the book.
Nice, man. I mean, it's very clear, like looking at your ultra sign up, that the long distances seem to call to you. I mean, looking here, it's like it's very largely hundreds and like 200s stuff. Um, what is this pull, I guess, for the really long like 100 milers of like Leadville and um Moab and these kind of things? Like what really draws you to that kind of effort?
I think generally after Ironman and that first year of Leadville, I thought Ironman was at the, in '04, I thought Ironman was like the biggest thing that I could do. And I wasn't even sure I could complete it, quite honestly. I didn't know.
Sure.
I didn't push my body that far. I didn't know how far I could push my body. And then 2010, fast forward to 2010, the first Leadville, the same thing. Like, I was pretty dang nervous at the starting line. First 100. I mean, I ran 50, but I mean, we're talking about double the distance. I mean, like, I had a good fairing at the 50 miler, but it's twice as far. Like that is, it's not like, oh, just a few extra miles. This is like legit twice as far. And I
Yeah,
was like,
man.
super nervous at the starting line, just like, I don't know if I could do this. And it's that self talk, like where you can really almost talk yourself out of doing something because you're like, I don't know if it's possible. But inevitably I never shied away from it. So when I did the 100, I started to think like, where is my boundary at? Where's my break point at? Where's my limit? Like what can I not do? Or like where does that breaking point come in? And so I mean, it wasn't at the finish line at that 100, but I thought, where's this going? I ran the following year in 11. I started, I should say, and I DNF'd at Leadville. We had we had a child that winter, our first child,
Mm,
and life just changed and structure changed and the dynamics of
of course, man.
running 16 miles a day changed, and all those life really changed, obviously.
Yeah, I would bet.
Yeah. And so I showed up in 2011 completely unprepared, but with the idea that I did it last year and fared well. I could probably just get this done, just get this done. But I didn't show up properly trained. But I think the whole theme is still like, where's that breaking point, and where and can I find it, you know? And so
Hmm.
the hundreds became it, and then I was doing like 200s in a year, like, you know, like May and in August, just to, you know, just to challenge myself in a summer season with different events. So I feel like I'm stacking events differently all the time to kind of like pit them against themselves to see if my body can handle it, and if there's where and if that breaking point will come across at. And I don't know if I found it, but I mean, I've obviously came closer to finding it, and reaching out to those corners of my abilities to see where they are. But I don't know if I've, you know, I haven't had a breaking point where I'm like, I'm done, and there's still something left of this event that I'm in at this point in my life, in my career.
Interesting. So like I love that looking for the boundaries. I think that's kind of what this whole sport's about. And it's one of the reasons I think it calls to so many people because it is, I mean, most people theoretically, if you train enough, can finish 100. It's just not, you're not moving that fast, right? It's very much a just relentless pursuit to finish. And that said, like you have some solid finishes, man. I mean, I think you were what 10th or 11th at Moab 1 year. So like what helps you what does the training look like to give you your best opportunity to beat that breaking point at some of these distances, especially with the
Yeah, yeah,
kid, right? Because like you said earlier, I mean, a double eight per day is, I mean, a lot to ask for anybody, but like especially a lot to ask for someone who like has kids and a job or whatever that doesn't lead to it. So like, what does the training look like now? Granted, with your background, like you have a good base, but like, what does the training look like now that you do other stuff? Because the time you got 10th, I think it was like 2022. So I mean, it's pretty recent. You have life things. Like, how do you fit that in and how do you make that happen?
yeah. It's a great question, Will. It life is busy. We wound up having a second child. My two daughters are 12 and 9 currently,
Hmm.
and my daughter will be 13 here in less than a month, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Actually, in a month and 2 days from
Nice.
today. So, so we're right in the thick of it. My wife has a full-time job. I've always worked in some capacity, you know, a full-time job or more if I'm not volunteering for something as well. So,
Sure.
so yeah, life is super busy. I mean, it is just incredibly busy, and moving so fast. Like it's just one of those things where I wish like there was more time in the day sometimes, but that's something I can't change. So I can't run 8 miles a day anymore, twice a day. I mean, it's just not
Yeah,
going to
of
happen.
course.
But I'm creative, and we just talked before the start of this show, briefly for just a split second, and yeah, and I told you I'm pretty worked, right? Like literally sitting here, I like just toweled off from my last run. I did a big challenge. I have Cocodona 250 here, in a month and a day from today. So on May 6th,
Yeah,
I'll
man.
start Cocodona 250, and I'm
Uh,
in my last little block of training. And this isn't what my training looks like. I guess it's not answering your question. So let me just make sure I clarify that. But I just finished in the last 55 hours. I did 5 by 5 by 55, which is a play on the David Goggins 4 by 4 by 48, which is 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours. I had done that a couple years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago for a different event. And Cocodona is going to be about 5 days worth of work, potentially, of moving forward constantly.
it's
And
yeah,
so I thought 5 by 5 by 55 is a little different play. It gets me running different times of the day all the time. Every hour is going to be different. Every run is going to be a different time of day. And life didn't stop for me during this challenge. I just ran my last one at 7 a.m. this morning to finish
yeah.
at 8. And we were in contact in the last day or two because I wanted an extra 10 minutes so I could look like I didn't just get off the trail from running five
Yeah,
miles
man,
this
that's
morning.
fair.
Yeah. So, but it's interesting because what I found out in this 5 by 5 by 55, which might help answer your question, is that I am running, and I had a I am running like whenever it's possible. Like I am always looking for little windows to run. Um, I was joking the other day. It's you have to hear me out, but I was joking the other day, and I was telling someone that I rarely wear underwear. And really, where I was going with it is that I am always wearing running shorts under my clothes, and at any given moment, I will. Somebody says, "Oh, hey, we're out of this meeting early," and if it's early enough, if there's a 45-minute little gap, I am the first one to like open up the back of my truck. I got four pairs of shoes in there. I am taking off my jeans or my shorts, my casual shorts, my cargo shorts or something, and I am in running clothes in about 3 minutes, and I'm hitting the buttons on my watch to go for a run. I'm gonna, squeeze something in this little space before I have to do my next task, whether it's picking up a kid from school or taking them to their track practice or their dance competition or whatever it is, volleyball we're in. I mean, all these things that, life's just happening. Uh, so I guess the answer to my question is I'm fitting it in whenever I can. And if I can't get it in, I'm just setting I'm sorry, I'm setting the alarm an hour early, or I'm making sure everyone's in bed by 9 o'clock at night. And at 9:30, I'm sneaking out the front door to go for a run for an hour, just to get it done. So unfortunately, that's what training looks like. I still keep a structure and do seasons and blocks and all those things. I don't run year round. I do take a good bit of time off after a season. Like last year, I did probably about 2 months off after I think Run Rabbit was my last one last year. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what it looks like for me. And I just was thinking about that through this process of 5x5 by 55 that I just finished up.
Love that, man. And like, I mean, I relate completely. Work, couple jobs, and like occasionally someone will cancel last minute, and it's just I'm in spandex pretty much all the time, which is not the most comfortable way to go through a day, but it does allow me to like get my training in even at a with a hectic life schedule. So yeah, I think sometimes you just got to figure out the ways to make it fit and determine whether it's a large enough priority to some degree.
Totally. It's funny because my daughter played volleyball this winter. It was her first season and she tried out. I was really excited and happy for her that she was trying something new and stepping out of some comfort zones and trying to, figure out what she wants to do
It's awesome.
later on in life and sport, right? Whatever it is. So, no pressure from us as parents, but we'll support her in anything that she decides to do.
It's
She
great.
really likes music. So for her to try out for sport was kind of a little bit different. So it was great.
Yeah.
Um, but that we have like traveling team volleyball teams here. I'm sure most people do. But it's a little crazy and competitive, and she's already behind the power curve. So um, we had to drive about 40 minutes away for her to go to practice on Mondays and Wednesdays at a school, not the school we go to normally. And practice was an hour and a half, and we wanted to support her in that. So I would take her there and have this 90-minute window. So here I am. I'm like exploring a new town and figuring out their trails, you know, getting on little Facebook groups in this town of, where people are running and what time and, all these things. So, it's, I guess I'm always creative in the time frames that I go run. So people on Strava were like, did you move? And I'm like, no, I just drive to this other town and go run for an hour and a half, an hour and 15 minutes on Mondays and Wednesdays. I still live in the same town, but my daughter's playing volleyball. And the funniest thing is that there's like 10 cars in the pickup lane of the school, and people will sit in their car for the whole 90 minutes,
Hmm.
like playing on their phones, whether they're taking a nap, maybe they're making phone calls, maybe they're, on a laptop and they're actually working or something along those lines. Who knows how productive they're being? But I, I just like, I can't sit in my vehicle for 90 minutes and wait for my daughter to play volleyball as much as I'm trying to support her in that. As long as it's just a practice and not an actual game or something, I got to go run. Like I got to be productive. And if I'm not running, snowing, I would go inside and work on my laptop and work. And hopefully I was working and I was able to get out earlier in the day because I didn't work. So I'm making up for work at the volleyball practice. So but I think it's
Right.
just about being creative for me.
I agree, man. I couldn't double down more on that, very honestly. It's just like finding the slots and doing the best you can. and like trying to get some level of aggregate volume that helps you support what you're trying to do. And sometimes that's a very like nicely structured training plan that looks good on the internet. And sometimes it's, well, I guess I have an hour, so I'm going to go do something.
Yeah, totally.
So like you have run a good amount of 200s. I see the like a good number of them on there. And I think that is this distance that is let's call it mysterious to some. And like it is something I've only trained a few people for and definitely talked to quite a few people about, but we don't have enough, let's call it data or experience, or they haven't been around long enough to really know what training should look like. So, what do you feel helps you train well for a 200 where, I mean, you're going to be out for at least 3 days if you're fast? And what do you feel is like useful there? Like, what does the sleep schedule look like? Like, how do you break it up? Um, what does all of the little things look like in these really long races where to some degree it's just like how can I keep moving?
You said I've done a number, a fair number. So a fair number must be two. Will I've done
I
Moab
mean,
twice.
I see Moab
It's
twice
fine.
and I see you signed up for the Cocodona. So yeah.
And I'll
And
be
like
back in Moab this year.
and you
Well,
and I
so I'll
have
do
like
Kokoda. Yeah,
sweet.
I'll be at Kokoda and Moab this year.
And I
So
remember talking about it with
potentially
you at
4 days.
Airbike, but I think it's probably actually why. Yeah. But yeah, that's
No
fair.
worries. I'm just teasing. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks
yeah.
for the correction.
No, yeah, you're right. It is it's a newer distance, and we're still trying to navigate the structure and the training for that. I think the obvious um, things are that it's not double the 100-mile distance, which some people actually don't know, but in the space that we're in, it is pretty common knowledge. So I usually add about 10%, maybe 10 or 15% of volume throughout the course of training over the 100-mile distance. So not a ton more, surprisingly, but I think the structure looks a little bit different. And again, I'm the busy guy. I got the family. I got a lot of moving parts. And so a week for me, pretty much Monday through Friday, would look just like 100-mile training. I'd have some easy runs, some recovery runs, some depending on what time of the season we're in, either intervals or some steady state or some tempo work, followed by a recovery day, some some strength training for maintenance is what I think I'd specifically call it.
Nice.
So some of the regular stuff that we do for hundreds already, or even ultras or 50s or whatever the distance is. But I don't think much changed during the week. But I think the weekend structure could change. Um, and And just like we do in periodization, where we go like 3 weeks on, 1 week off, I think those build weeks of those 3 weeks on, those weekends could look a little bit different for the 200-mile group or people in that space or looking to get into that space. I think it's a slower effort and it's a longer duration.
Mm,
And again, time management is just what it is, but it's not uncommon for me on the weekend to go run for an hour in the morning, first thing at like 6 a.m., 5 a.m., whatever, dark, before the family gets moving. Then we have a volleyball tournament, and I'm checking out the volleyball tournament as an example. And I see there's a 2 hour window between matches. Um, you know, I, I'm out the volleyball back door with my running shoes on. I'm getting 2 hours into the dot. I'm coming flying through the door, sweating, and sitting down next to some other parent that is not sweating to watch my kid play volleyball. So an extra 2 hours there, and then at night, I've been actually just for no apparent reason. I have a treadmill, and I've been walking uphill on steep stuff with a pack on the treadmill in the evening hours as an example on a Saturday. So it's not all at once. I'm not getting 5 hours, on the trail and beautiful pictures for Instagram and all that kind of stuff. I'm really just piecing it together. I'm just doing the best I can. But 5 hours is 5 hours. If your structure was 5 hours that morning and you went out and tagged two summits and got, 35 photos for, the social media points. It's not the same, but at the end of the week, it actually pretty much is the same. But I'm also like including life in there too. I'm
Hmm.
driving to this volleyball tournament. I'm getting, life is happening around. So it's not like I'm resting between these workouts, right? So I'm just getting it in when I can. And I think
Yeah.
that's a little bit different than the 100-mile training. Maybe the volume. I mean, at some point you might do 5 hours for volume for a 100-miler, um, but I don't think there's any wrong time to train, uh, specifically for the ultras that we're doing at 100 miles or better.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I think especially for something like a 200, it, I don't know. To me, it makes sense that you're going to like probably need a random nap somewhere. And as a result, you will like need to just be able to go run off of be it a full stomach or whatever it is. And so integrating some of this training into your life can almost be more useful because you're having to run out the gate or move out the gate or like trek up a treadmill with a pack on, even though it may not be like this perfect setup where you had a gel or a goo or whatever. It's like, I think it mimics the race dynamics a lot more accurately in some ways.
Totally. So I'll step back to this 5x5 by 55 challenge. I had a I had to pull up like my wife and I's schedule for the kids and our family dynamic. I had to pull up I coach I coach high school track here locally, and it's track season right now.
Awesome.
So I had to pull up the track schedule, and then I had to pull up my own calendar for work and athlete calls, and I had to figure out where the every 5 hours was going to work. And I'm like, well, it doesn't work here, so I need to bump it there, and it doesn't work here. I'm going to have to bump it back, and so I wound up landing where I landed. I only had to move one meeting, and this morning was questionable. The bus comes at 7:05, and I had to run at 7 o'clock, but I found a different means for that. So minimal impact, but life was going on around me. So one of the workouts I had to do was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had to get 5 miles in, but
Hmm.
track practice starts at 3:45. So I show up to the track at 2:55. I strip down into like full on racing clothes, put on my racing flats, and I am just booking around this track. I started at like maybe 9 minute miles, and I'm finishing at like 7:30s. And I'm trying to get it done before the kids come out to the track because
Is
I need to
right.
get them started on their workout, like,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, exactly. But I also picked up a kid from school, my own child, one of my own children from school at 2 o'clock, and she was hungry, so we stopped at Wendy's. So at 2:20, I'm slopping down an impulse buy. I'm slopping down, what is it, like the pretzel baconator. So I get to the track and I'm a mile in, and all I could feel is this pretzel baconator. And just like you said, the thought is like, whoa, there's a pretzel baconator in there. It might come out. But also I was like, I'm gonna run on a full stomach. Maybe not this hard and not on a track, but I'm training my body right now to like for ultra, even though this is not an ultra at this moment. It's just a 5 mile run around a track. But I was running on this full stomach thinking, man, that was a bad decision. I got through it. I made it. I kept everything down.
I'm
Practice went
impressed.
fine. No
Nice
one knew
job.
anything differently, but I thought, that wasn't bad gut training. I mean, it could have been better, but it wasn't bad.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that's honestly really good to do that occasionally for some of these. So like if you're doing, and I know you've coached people for them too. So like if you're, what is your general thoughts on sleep on something like 200? Because I think that is one of the big differences between that and 100, where it's like, I mean, if you just, take enough caffeine and don't stop moving, you can probably finish 100 because it just sucks to stay awake all night for most people, but otherwise it's fine. But when we're looking at like finishing times for a 240, it's like 80 hours. And that's, you're going to need to sleep unless you want to go insane. So, like, what does sleep strategies look like for you for this?
The sport's obviously growing will, and actually, I think it applies to hundreds as well. Some of these hundreds that we're seeing that are like 36 or 38 hours,
Sure.
it's still a pretty big stretch. Like Leadville's 30 hours, and you're right, with some caffeine and a warm cup of coffee at 2 in the morning, you could probably push on and finish by 10 a.m., which is
Mhm.
30 hours from the last time. But some of these longer hundreds, or more forgiving hundreds with more time allotted, 38 hours, it's quite a long time to go without sleep as well. So really, my rule of thumb, what I tell my athletes is, um, if you're not moving efficiently forward due to sleep, then that's a good time to find a spot that's comfortable, depending on what time of day it is. Find a spot on the side of the trail. Make sure you know which way you're going. So when you get up, you're not disoriented. I've heard of people going backwards when they've woken up from a trail nap.
Uh,
So make sure you know which direction you're going. Sometimes we point poles that direction or make an arrow out of our poles. Sometimes we put our feet on the direction we want to go and our head at the other way. So when you sit up, you're looking at the direction you want to go. Just little tricks. Whatever your trick is going to work for you, but you want to know which direction you need to go when you do get up. But wind up just laying on the side of the trail for 15 minutes. It might not even be sleep, quite honestly, Will. It's just a matter of like letting your body fully relax, just focusing on your breathing, bringing the heart rate down. Sometimes when I do lay on the side of the trail, I won't actually like fall asleep
mhm.
or go out. I'll just lay there and hear myself breathe and hear people run by occasionally. But it's a matter of winding the body down and almost trying to reset it and tricking your body into thinking it's getting its reset. At the 200 miles, though, specifically, in addition to, so I think that could apply to your 100 miler.
I could see that,
And
especially for something like a Ray or something.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You're a with a 50-hour cutoff.
Uh-huh.
Trail naps are definitely needed. For the 200 miles, the other thing that I'm telling my athletes is early and often is the two words that we're using. So don't wait until night two at 2 a.m. when you're completely wasted and you're not moving efficiently. Again, another telltale sign. If you're not moving efficiently because you're tired, try to reset the brain and make you think that you're not as tired as you think you are by getting a 15-minute trail nap. So early and often. So that first night, I'm just go around in Cocodona. I'm going to try to get a cat nap in somewhere along the lines. It might be at my crew vehicle if it works out, but I'm not going to schedule it either, if that makes any
Mhm.
sense. I hear of a lot of people saying, oh, when I get to mile 82, I'm going to sleep for 2 hours. And that's a great plan. But if you get to mile, what I just said, 82, and you're not tired and you're moving efficiently, maybe you continue moving forward and you wait it out till you are tired. And maybe that's 92. And maybe 92 is in the middle of the trail, right? And maybe it's in the middle of the night. So you break out that extra layer, you get tucked behind a rock or something that's you're out of the wind or the element or whatever it might be. And you try to get 15 minutes on the trail efficiently to get up and move forward. I think when we plan them, we get rutted into that plan. And so even if we show up, we're not tired, we're typically, I think that's when you find yourself, or at least I find myself, like in the back of the car, like I plan this sleep, I need to sleep here, but my mind's going, I'm not actually sleeping, I'm restless. And so I'm not doing either. I'm not sleeping and I'm not moving forward. And I think you have to do one or the other. Um,
I like that. And makes a bunch of sense to me. Just kind of like riding with what it is, and particularly the efficiency note. Because like, yeah, if you're moving, I don't know, a mile an hour due to your eyes not staying open, a nap probably makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and I think I think ultra runners get into the rut where we think we're not being like, oh, if I lay down, I'm just losing more time. But if you lay down for 15, 20 minutes, you can make that up in the next 2 hours so easily compared to just stumbling around for the next 2 hours. You could get up and maybe start trotting. You could maybe knock out like 12 or 14-minute miles instead of these 20, 25-minute miles. You're just plodding along and you're making yourself more tired. Like it's only getting exponentially greater the amount of sleep you're going to need or the exertion that you're putting out to move forward through this battle, this tiredness battle.
Makes sense. So if you are taking a trail nap, since you seem to like, I've heard people be a fan of them and not. So like, since you mentioned the trail nap, do you carry anything with you that makes that more accessible, like some kind of pad, or do you just like go to the dirt? Like, what is your preference there? Like, how do you make that better doable? I see a smile for those not listening. So like, I
Yeah.
realize this is a point of
I've
contention amongst people. So it's kind of why I'm curious. Mhm.
I've done some of the 200s will require like a space blanket or
Hmm.
that thing you get at the finish line of the marathon,
Yep.
that everyone sees, or that's more of a recognizable uh, image for for those listening. They make them in a sleeping bag format. They make them in like you can crawl into it like a big giant burrito, and it's required gear actually in
Sorry,
destination trails.
I'm laughing because it is like it does look like tinfoil, so you would look exactly like a burrito.
Oh,
That's
you look like a
delightful. Yeah,
huge giant burrito. Yeah.
that's
And
amazing.
you can't miss it on the trail at night. Like it's this guy that's laying on the trail and he's just this big shiny burrito laying on the side of the trail. Like
Fantastic.
6 foot, like a 6'2" burrito.
That's
Um,
great.
so those are required, sometimes required gear. I'm not sure if it's required for Cocodona. It might be strongly suggested, but so if I have it, when I have it, or because I have it, I've used it and deployed it before. Again, the same thing, like just like you said, it's a go for some people. It's a no for me. I've done it, and I wind up just like it's winds up becoming like a sauna, and I wind up becoming like damp through all my layers, just become wet, and
Got
now
it.
I get out of my burrito and start moving forward at night, and now I'm getting like introducing cold air onto these wet clothing layers, and it's layers. I'm typically I run in layers. I'm not like a one shirt type of guy,
Sure.
depending on the course, the weather, the terrain, all those things. But typically, I'm layered up in the evening hours. Um, and so you're introducing cold air to that, and it just doesn't work for me. So I quickly tried it and have dismissed it. I still carry the space bag in case I need it for an emergency because it does work and keep you warm when you're in it. But to get up and move forward afterwards didn't work for me. So I like to have for myself just like a puffy jacket of some sort of thin. I have a really thin, lightweight, puffy jacket, and it's just an extra layer. It breathes well, but it also like has insulating properties. I'm not trying to get like comfy and like hide things over my eyes, none of that kind of stuff. I do have an advantage though, and the advantage is from my experiences in the military. So we were on the move quite a bit in training. I was never in a wartime situation. But in training, we were always on the move and doing different things. It was hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. And anytime you could close your eyes and get some shut eye because you didn't know what the next move was, you would just, slump up against a tree, lean on your pack, and get those few minutes of sleep in before you were directed to get up and move somewhere else and hurry up and wait again. So I do have that experience, and I know that trail naps are a struggle for some people, and even the concept of it. As far as why I was chuckling in UA 100, which I did just this past year in 23, a couple from New Zealand and I were connected. They were looking to get into the event in a voluntary role without too much commitment, and wanted to see more about it. And I was looking for a crew and pacer. So Eva and her husband Pete crew for my friend and I. And Eva is pacing me, and I said, "Hey, I'm not moving efficiently. I'm like mile 80 or something like that. It's dark.
Mm.
We just came across this like bench, this rock flat bench, and I thought, man, this is. We had to just go tag an aid station, sign in, sign out, and then come back across the bench. So it was an out and back section, which URA has quite a few of.
Mm.
And I thought, when I come back, this is going to be a good spot to sleep. It's flat. There's nice sandstone spots. And I told Eva, is inexperienced with long distance ultras, specifically, who comes from a mountain bike and endurance world, where trail naps probably aren't relevant. And she's
Yeah.
like, and I'm like, hey, this is my spot. I'm going to use the restroom real quick behind this bush. Of course, we're boys and girls, so I, discreetly walk away and go hide behind the tree, and use the restroom. Come back, and she's building like a grass bed for me. Like she's like pulling grass out of the ground, and she's like piling it up like a Naked and Afraid type of scenario or something like that from the TV show. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, you said you were going to sleep here. You put your pack and you said you'd be right back. I thought, I'm like, oh, whatever you have here, I'll sleep on. But really, like a dirt nap is legit dirt nap. Like I'm going to lay right here. I'm 10 feet off the trail. So, people don't step on me or they don't hit me with their headlamp as they go by. But otherwise, I'm just going to lay right down into the dirt and use my pack as a quasi pillow. And and that's the extent of it for me. Like I don't, I will try to get out of the wind. In the daytime, I will like hide under a tree to get in some shade. But otherwise, it is no holds barred. I'm laying right in the dirt wherever I am.
Love that. That's great, man. Well, we're coming close on end of time. Anything else that like you think would be useful to people or you want to share before we start to close out?
I don't believe so. I think all the questions that I've answered come from trial and error. It's great to uh, do those tests on yourself and see what works for you and what doesn't work. Maybe you're not a trail napper. Maybe that burrito, space blanket burrito, human sized burrito thing works for you. Um, so those are all great things to try out. There's a ton of information on the internet this day and age uh, to kind of help you vet that process, but it really comes down to trial and error, and you should get out and try these things yourself to see if they work in training before you get to the event.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, man. So if anybody wants to like follow up with you, how can they find you on the internet to chat with you or whatever?
I am on the World Wide Web. I am at I am at altitudeendurancecoaching.com. I'm also Brian Passenti, Passenti, and I am on Facebook, Instagram, and I think LinkedIn, probably the three that I do. Uh, I too have a podcast. I think we're on episode 10 with a friend of mine, Simon, called Buckle Up with Simon and Brian.
Oh,
We have YouTube channel, and we're on all the major podcast platforms as well. And that's about it. And that's
awesome.
enough.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'll definitely include all of that stuff in the show notes for sure. So thanks, man. I really appreciate you coming on and like good luck at Cocodona. It's coming up quick. And I hope you do so well. Like it should be fun.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to having one singular action for 5 days or up to 5 days, and it's just moving forward. Life is busy. There's a lot of working parts, and I'm excited to kind of minimize those things and just have one singular action ahead of me. So appreciate it.
Feel that, man. Yeah, hang out for a sec. Everybody else, thank you for listening. I will attach all of Brian's info in the show notes, and we'll be back soon with another one.